Welcome to the DLLS Rangers Weekly Podcast, now part of the All City Network. Hit the subscribe button for YouTube and also become a DLLS diehard at www.alldlls.com. Now here's Jeff and John. Everybody, welcome to the DLLS Weekly Rangers Podcast on DLLS All City Sports. This is episode number 4, and today Matt Hicks is going to join us from the Texas Ranger radio broadcast. Guys, hit the subscribe button down there. We like subscribes and likes. Go to DLLS_sports to that YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button. Jeff, yesterday was Kamar Day.
Yeah.
We were out there for that. This thing's winding down. Tonight's DeGrom. If you're getting the audio part, I know that'll be out probably before the start tonight. But, it's winding down. It's not the season that a lot of these fans were expecting, and a lot of us thought that was going to happen. It's disappointing, but they won the World Series, dadgummit, last year. So I live off of that as a Texas Ranger fan. But we'll get with Matt in a little bit, talk about what went on. But what do you think? I mean, what?
Yeah, it's been the same problem all year. It starts with the offense, and you can say injuries were a factor for sure. With Josh Young and Evan Carter not in the lineup every day for a significant chunk of the season. Wyatt Langford, while he's going great now, kind of struggled early on. And then Adolis, of course, is the big one. Him and Jonah Heim. Really, Marcus Semien hasn't had a great year. So, you kind of look at those three guys. You can look at Leote a little bit too. It's been a situation that just hasn't come to fruition, and then now that they're out of it, you're seeing Kumar Rocker in the major leagues. I don't think if the Rangers were 7 games up, maybe you'd still see him maybe as a playoff weapon, but this is about getting him ready for the 2025 rotation. And the first one in Seattle wasn't bad. I know he wasn't thrilled with it. It looked pretty good. It looked better than yesterday's. When it was pretty interesting talking to him afterward. John, you were there.
Yeah, he held back.
He said he wasn't trying. He was intentionally trying to get the ball in the strike zone by stepping off the gas and throwing softer, I guess, a couple miles an hour and sacrificing velocity for accuracy, and it didn't work.
No,
and he said, maybe your second major league start isn't the time to try that. And Mike Maddox went out and visited him and apparently said, "Hey, let's step it up a little bit here." And he did for a little while. But then because you look at all the base runners and the pitches he threw and 4 walks, and he still struck out 5 guys. So even his bad stuff is pretty good stuff. And
he keeps composed, man. He stays composed.
He does, and that's a big deal too. And so he, this next start, assuming the rotation stays online, is going to be the Thursday game at Oakland, which is the last game ever in the Coliseum. There's going to be 50,000 people there. There are fears that fans are going to be running on the field and setting things on fire and all of this crazy stuff.
It's going to be like 10-cent beer night from the 70s.
Well, and I'll be honest, people are thinking maybe the game ends up being a forfeit. But anyway, it's going to be the most people he's ever pitched in front of. So he's going to have his major league debut, which comes with tons of adrenaline and nerves. His home debut, which he said not as much as the first time, but he was still nervous. So then he's going to have this one at a decrepit ballpark with fans who are going to be pissed off and drunk and ready to fight somebody. So these first 3 starts are going to be pretty unique atmospheres for him, and he's going to have a lot of stuff going for him and a lot of things he has to control outside of balls and strikes. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm not covering that game. I'm covering the last series, but I'm not covering that game because I didn't want to put up with the crap. I mean, I've seen Oakland Coliseum enough. I don't need to see it one last time. I don't need to see 50,000 people. And here's the thing. They're doing a giveaway of the stadium, a little model or whatever. But they're not giving it out until after the game. So all the fans have to stay that want that thing. And So the traffic's going to be a disaster afterwards. It's just going to be a mess. And it's getaway day. You always want to get out of there and get to the next city. It just wouldn't be possible. So anyway, but back to Kamar, you encouraged, I guess, is the right word, but based on what he did in the minor leagues, what he's done so far and how he seems to fit in and not be terribly overwhelmed.
Well, just watching his 2 starts, even yesterday, dialing back, and the way he talked to us afterwards, the way he went out there and did what he did. Kamar Rocker is a guy that I would almost bet my house will be in this rotation when the season starts next year. He just seems like he's ready to be a major league pitcher just because he doesn't lose composure or he doesn't get flustered. I mean, the very first game, which was pretty impressive, first 2 guys get on weak hits. He works out of that jam, no runs, strikes out a couple. It just looks like, hitting 98, 99 miles an hour. I mean, it was just pretty impressive. What he did yesterday, he messes with, it's funny. It's pretty ballsy, to tell you the truth, to go, you know what, I'm going to dial it back a little bit, not throw as hard, see what I can work on. And then he realizes after his pitching coach says, hey, dude, you know what? Let's hit the accelerator here and get going. And he realized, well, maybe my second start in the major leagues wasn't where I needed to toy or play with that. That's what spring training's about. But he doesn't, he's working his craft. He knows these games don't mean anything right now, and he's out there working it. This guy is in the rotation, I think.
Yeah. And when you say that, though, and I agree, you have to put an asterisk by it. He's going to be in the rotation, but the Rangers are going to watch his innings. Absolutely. He's not at 100 innings this year. He's not going to approach it. And, you can throw on the side. You can throw on the side and all that stuff. Great. But it's not the same. I mean, guys throw on the side anyway. So, they're not going to let him go 200 innings. They're not going to let him go 180. I don't think they'd let him go 150. I would think the 120 to 135 range next year would be about as far as they'd want to take him. And then if they think they're going to make the postseason,
they're going to hold him back.
Want him in the postseason, then they're going to have to dial him back in September a little bit. So it's going to be Kumar Rocker in the rotation, but it may be 25 starts of I don't know, not even 5 innings apiece, or maybe 5 innings. That'd be 125 innings. It'll be something like that. There may be times where he goes a little bit further. They might skip a start if he does that, but they're definitely just not going to let him run wild. And I think Garrett Crochet is a good example of that with the White Sox. Had the standout first half.
All-star.
Everybody thought he was going to get traded at the deadline, but teams were worried what it would look like in the second half, and rightfully so, as it turns out. So I think that, let's be excited about Kumar Rocker for sure, but let's temper our expectations for 2025 because it's not going to be him going out and throwing 7 or 8, 9 innings a start. It's definitely going to be a governor is going to be on him.
Okay, so next week will be the last week of the season. Is next week. We'll do a show. You'll be in Seattle for that last series. We'll do a show from out there next Friday. I want to talk about the offense next week and some places they need to improve and go from there. This week, let's start with the starting rotation when it's coming to an end. First, let's talk about who they have for sure coming back next year that look like viable options. And I start out, obviously, with Jacob deGrom, who's throwing tonight. You've got Kamar, which is a name that we've mentioned back and forth we think will make this rotation. You got Tyler Malley, who is for sure he's signed through next year to be here. You've also got Cody Bradford. That's another name you've got there. Jack Leiter, who's on this team right now. Who else? Who do we have that's
John Gray, who's under contract for
he's under contract. That's 6
Dane Dunning,
who's in AAA and struggling.
He will go into arbitration. I think he's hurt. I mean, he's been on the injured list a couple times this year, and the velocity's just been way down. So he has some work to do this offseason. But those are guys who are, and then Emiliano Teodo, who I'm guessing we'll talk about in the second half, he's going to be put on the 40-man roster. So he'll be in camp. That means that there's So who's not on the roster? Evaldi, Heaney, Scherzer. Now that doesn't mean that they can't come back, but as of right now, when you go into free agency, they are not on your roster. I mean, everybody assumes that Evaldi is going to take the free agency. Chris Young even knows it's going to happen. So now he's going to be the Rangers' top priority.
Sure,
and he should be, but
he's an innings eater no matter what. So,
well, he's a veteran and knows how to pitch and compete. So it's not a rosy picture going into the offseason. There's some holes there, and they'll be addressed. I mean, that's Chris Young's and Bruce Bochy's mantra is starting pitching and defense. So there will be some definite holes that need to be filled. And depending on the money situation, I think they'll have enough money to go get Evaldi regardless. But you could see John Gray get traded. I don't know if anybody would try to acquire Malley based on him making only 3 starts after Tommy John surgery, but it wouldn't be surprising to me if those guys were traded, because that's $31 million right there. And if money is going to be tight and you have to figure out a way to spread your budget, then maybe you can find a cheaper option there. But the offseason is going to be interesting for sure.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about some names out there. First of all, obviously, a couple of the guys that they will go after, they're not going to be names particularly, but guys like Jose Urena that you bring in on a minor league deal that have a history of starting pitching. We'll probably see 2 or 3 of those guys heading into spring training that'll come in on minor league deals, because the Rangers have had success with that. And they as we know, as everyone in Major League Baseball knows, you want to be with a winning organization, and you're likely, if you're throwing well, even if you start at AAA, you're going to get a chance to come up, make some spot starts, and go. That's just the way baseball works, and this organization will need that depth. And some of them will make them out of spring training. That's happened. So you look at those, but some other names, Evaldi's the one you said, obviously they should go after. Scherzer could come back, maybe on an incentive-laden, cheaper deal where he gets $10 million, $15 million with incentives if he has so many innings, makes an all-star game, all of that stuff. But that's another name that could be the back end of your rotation.
Yeah, it's there might be guys like Lorenzen too. A guy who the Rangers see something in that they like, and I know that Lorenzen was a kind of a deal they made at the end of spring training, and the price was right, but it turned out working real well.
It's better to have him full spring.
But it would be a back end of the rotation guy at that point. Just there are going to be a lot of innings that go around. There always are. But with the potential of having Rocker, Leiter, Bradford in your rotation, and DeGrom still coming off of injury, there are going to be instances where guys need to be skipped, where you don't want them to go more than 4 or 5 innings. So then that brings into play an Urena. I would imagine he'll get an offer to start somewhere.
I think so.
He's been really, really good, but he also.
Let me be clear. I'm saying a comparison to Urena.
Yeah. Sure. But then there's guys like our buddy Walt Pennington, who's had a really good last couple months here, can go multiple innings. Matt Festa, who's like 5-0 in 14 appearances.
Impressive.
Just guys that can give multiple innings. That's what it's going to need to be. It's going to be a lot of multiple inning relievers. And then, you got to figure out what you want to do at the back end. The back end's been so good this year.
Yep.
Can you bring back Yates and Robertson? Can you bring back one of them, and try to find a replacement for the other one? Or it's just, there's so much to do and so many questions with the payroll and the TV deal, things that need to be sorted out here before they start their deep dive. I mean, their season's going to be over next week. And, they're not going to want to take any time off. They're going to want to have their pro scouting meetings quickly, figure out how much money they have to spend, figure out player option situations. Robertson has a mutual option for $7 million. So imagine that gets declined because he could probably get more money somewhere. But, why not negotiate an extension with work something out with him? Same thing with Yates. So, but yeah, you got to know what kind of money you're spending. That forms your plan. And if you have to make trades, you say, okay, what can we trade John Gray for? What can we expect to get for John Gray? Which teams out there need starting pitching? and start finding trade candidates from there. And that rolls into the GM meetings. You start laying the groundwork for trades there. Get through November, bam, December, the winter meetings this year in Dallas. And you hope the offseason moves faster than it did last year. Anyway, I'm just rambling at this point, but that's the way baseball season is.
Right. And next week, I want to go into more of the offense. We'll talk about the woes that the offense had, places and that they might go this offseason, who needs to be better, all of that. I want to get into that next week because we got to go to an offseason. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things. But to end the season, we'll talk on that. Let's talk about Chris Young. He takes over the new title of President of Baseball Operations. Did he keep the GM title, or is Bonifay or Fenstermaker going to take over that GM role? Do we know yet?
I asked him about it twice now, which I'm sure annoyed him, but it's TBA. He said that in the future that they will be finding a spot in the front office, whether it's a true GM or not. I would it's what the Rangers did with John Daniels. He was president of baseball operations. He kind of went around rudderless there without a GM, and then they hired Chris Young. So it makes a lot of sense. It would make sense in the sense that if Ross Fenstermaker were to interview for another GM job and could have the opportunity, look, guys, I can go take this job, or I can stay here where my family's put down some roots and just make me the GM and give me GM money. And then Dayton Moore, who was the Royals president of baseball operations for a number of years, would he want to be a GM again? Would he want to run the organization like he did at Kansas City, or would he be happy reporting to Chris Young? So we'll see what happens with that, but I wouldn't be surprised if somebody is added either to that spot or to the front office. Ross does the player development with Josh Bonifay as the farm director. That probably wouldn't change if Ross were to become the straight up general manager. So it may just be moving, but if Ross gets promoted, that would still leave an opening. So somebody somewhere is going to get a job in the front office. Yeah,
and that's going to one way or the other. Whether Ross goes up and then they need a new, director of player development, or maybe Bonifay moves up to that and they get a new minor league director. Who knows? But those guys have always been, I think Josh has told us he wants to come on and talk to us. He's fun to talk to about those minor leaguers. Fenstermaker's always been great talking to us about that too. So, nothing, we wish nothing but great things for those guys moving forward. But I had a question. I just didn't know. He got president of baseball operations. Do we have a GM? Is he still the GM? So this would be interesting. That's another offseason thing we might watch. It may, like you said, it may just be where they don't technically have one next season as they move forward and they take a while.
There's so much that goes on in a front office and a baseball off season, and Chris Young is really dialed into the major league team. Sure. So would Ross as a GM allow Chris just the freedom to not worry about the minor leagues, but to just kind of leave that, and he might be doing that as it is, but in an off season. You got to make sure the coaches are coming back. And if they aren't, you got to find a coach. And then the minor league coaching staff and changes you want to make there. And, I'm guessing that they're going to do a deep dive on why there weren't a lot of home runs hit in the system this year. And,
sure.
Just a lot of things that could come up. And so they'll have one more month to do it this year than they did last year, unfortunately. But they need to make the most of their time and you ready to hit the ground running when free agency opens.
All right. Well, listen, let's get Matt in here and talk some more about this big league stuff before heading down in the bus leagues. You're going out there tonight, and you're going to end the season out in Seattle.
Yeah, Anaheim. You finished in Anaheim.
Anaheim, that's right. You're going to Anaheim that last time. Yeah, Anaheim. Get out there and see Ron, who was always friendly every time we see him. He came up and talked to us, gave us a big hug when the Angels were in town last time. But let's get to Matt right after this. Guest segment's brought to you by the Round Rock Express. Jeff, what's going on Round Rock?
Well, nothing. Their season has come to an end. Or their home season has come to an end. They're on the road in Tacoma for the last one, but there's always something going on at Dell Diamond. Chris Almendarez keeps that place pretty busy. Right now, they're touting the the Round Rock Classic College Baseball Tournament that they just host in February. Next year, it's in February 21st through the 23rd. It's a hell of a field. Oregon State, Virginia, Oklahoma, and Minnesota. I mean, those are 4 really god-darn good teams. So check out mlib.com/round-rock for more information there. But we would be remiss if we didn't thank our friends there for supporting us for another year. Chris Almendaris, who runs the place down there, could not be a nicer guy, a better partner to be with when we were down there. Treated us with terrific hospitality and really look forward to that relationship continuing. So keep Round Rock in mind. Their 25th season is next year. So go to milb.com/round-rock for more information.
Okay, guys, and joining us right now from his home, it's part of the Texas Rangers radio broadcast, and our buddy Matt Hicks. Matt, what's going on, man?
Man, I tell you what, we're powering our way to the end, right? We're grinding and ready to go.
Yeah, it's taking an extra energy drink or cup of coffee at this point, but we're gonna get there. I was thinking back, Matt, and I don't know where the club was, but it was the 1/3 mark of the season, and you were on the broadcast talking, and you said, at this point in the season, oftentimes you are what you are. You are what your record says you are, and you were 100% right. I mean, it's just been a stagnant, really, the whole season. What have you seen from high above?
Yeah, what's your analysis? What went wrong?
Well, I don't know if you can pinpoint exactly one thing that went wrong, but to what you stated there, Jeff, you get about 50 or 60 games into the season, and I think you probably do have a pretty good idea of what your team's like. What the Detroit Tigers are doing this year is different, right? That's the aberration, and definitely not the norm. Teams can go on extended runs at some point in the season, but it just doesn't happen very often. And so, I think that last year, when we take a look at what the Rangers accomplished, you had everybody having really good seasons for the most part. And this year, the club, everybody deals with injuries, but I think the Rangers probably had more than their fair share that they had to deal with. And from a position player standpoint, when, at the beginning of the season, if you were told, well, you're not going to have Josh Young for 4 months, and you're essentially not going to have Evan Carter for the entire season, well, that's 2/9 of your lineup right there that, contributed heavily to what was a successful 2023, and especially what, Evan Carter was able to do at the end of the season when he joined the club and in the postseason. So you don't have those guys, and then you have a pretty decent chunk of your starting rotation that's not available for most of the year. So you're behind the 8 ball right there when it comes to all of that. And some guys have had good seasons, but collectively, as a whole, the entire team was not able to cobble together what they were able to do in 2023. And so, I don't think that there's any finger pointing probably that's necessary, but it's just one of those deals that these years are going to happen. And I realize fans are wondering, hey, it's essentially the same group of guys that won the World Series. But when you have a lot of those guys that are out for extended periods of time, that makes it really challenging.
Yeah, and when a team wins a World Series, they have guys who have career years. I mean, that's just the nature of it. You have guys that overachieve. Yep. And you can look back now and in hindsight and go back and look at their numbers at the beginning of the season. Adolis Garcia is not as good as he was last year, historically. Same thing with Jonah Heim. So, did they regress from what they are normally? Yes, they did, but still, you just didn't have the guys who broke out. So, Chris Young said this, you can have injuries or underperformance, but you can't have them both.
Right.
And the Rangers definitely had that offensively.
Yeah, scoring runs was it. The pitching staff, for the most part, even with the injuries they dealt with, was not bad. That was a team that was a pitching staff, even at the back end, which they didn't have all last year. They really struggled at the back end of the bullpen. This year, they really had a pretty decent bullpen, a decent starting rotation. They kept them in games.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, you take a look at what we had, like, people didn't know what we were going to have with Michael Lorenzen at the beginning of the season. And Michael Lorenzen ended up being a guy, who kept you in the ball game and gave you a chance to win every time that he stepped out on the mound. Or a guy like Jose Urena, who, really stepped forward during spring training and, took to heart whatever it was that he learned at the end of last year in the Chicago organization, in the White Sox system, and then was able to put it to use here this year. And then, he filled a number of voids, that early in the season, stepping in when needed and then getting moved to the rotation and being good there for 8 or 9 starts, then going back to the bullpen in a long relief role where he essentially not only pitched well in that role, but pitched well enough that it was of enough value to the team that it extended beyond his actual performance. And so, there were enough, and then, Cody Bradford, started off the season so well, got hurt, and you see what he's done, since he's come back. There have been a number of guys who have stepped up and done really, really well from a pitching standpoint. And that did help, keep the team, at least in the discussion for a pretty good chunk of the season. And, John, you talk about the back end of the bullpen, the signings of David Robertson and Kirby Yates in the offseason. When those guys got signed, there wasn't really a whole lot of hullabaloo around it. And you wonder, exactly where the team would have been had those two pitchers not been signed, because they've both had outstanding seasons.
Absolutely.
Well, the Rangers needed to address the back of the bullpen last offseason. And, all the things that went wrong, that one hit. They did address the back of the bullpen.
Yep.
So it can make you think last year, well, geez, if they'd had those two, would they have won 100 games? Probably.
Maybe.
Being realistic, yeah. But, Kirby Yates is making, $4.5 million this year? Robertson's deal was bigger, but they deferred a lot of it. I would bring those two guys back. I mean, I don't know what it would cost, but gosh, man, why not bring them back?
Well, I mean, it's certainly something that they have to consider despite their ages. Guys performing like this deep into their 30s is not something that you usually see. But then again, these guys are elite athletes. They take care of themselves. And they're, I thought when we signed Kirby Yates in the offseason, I don't know as though I've been more excited for an offseason signing, because of what I saw from Kirby toward the end of the season last year with Atlanta, and how he seemed to be progressing back to the Kirby Yates from a few years earlier that had, led the National League in saves when he was with the Padres. Just watching him and watching his splitter develop and get back to the really nasty splitter that he had before while he was pitching with Atlanta last year, I'm like, man, if he brings that to the table here in 2024, I know that he hasn't been signed and wasn't signed to be the closer, but I'm like, man, at some point he's going to find his way into that role, and it ended up being a lot earlier than some of us had expected. So,
yeah, but I mean, you look at their numbers are just it's just mind-boggling. They really are. I mean,
yeah,
Yates, he's blown the one save. I mean, how about this? David Robertson is third on the team in strikeouts. He has 94 strikeouts in 67 innings. He has more strikeouts than John Gray, Dane Dunning, Jose Urena. I mean, guys that have more innings than him, a lot more innings than him, and he has more strikeouts than they do. It's just, and it's been fun to me. He just has like a joy about him when he plays too. The way he hops off the mound, shakes the catcher's hand, messes around with the umpires. It's kind of refreshing. It's fun to watch. And so at his age, 39, he lives in Rhode Island in the off season. I don't know if geography would dictate where he goes. It didn't this year. Yates probably has earned at least a 2-year deal, you would think. But if the Rangers are serious about winning next year, It would be hard to say you're serious and not try to bring those two guys back.
Yeah, I think they both play with a great deal of passion, and I think that's something that you see in winning players and guys that want to be a part of a winning organization. You see that. The other number that's kind of crazy with Kirby Yates, I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but the number of hits he's allowed this year versus the number of innings pitched, it's something like 22 hits and 58, 59. I mean, that's if you've got a good closer, maybe by the end of the year, he's at around 60 or 65 innings, and maybe he's given up 45 hits. I mean, Kirby's given up half of that.
Yeah, I've got it right here. It's 58 and 2/3 innings and 23 hits.
That's nuts.
That's amazing.
Insane.
And he's not throwing. He's not a guy up there throwing 99, 101. Some of these guys that are just overpowering people. And for you guys especially, and me with what I do after the game, both those guys too never back away from talking. They're there, whether they had a good game or not, which there was very rarely they had a bad one. But I mean, Robertson especially, he was there waiting for you when you got into that clubhouse to talk about anything you needed to talk about. Yates was the same way, always cordial and ready to talk if you needed it.
Yeah, and that's the mark of veterans who realize everything surrounding the job, and they're there and they're accountable and they set an example for everybody else.
Yeah. No, Friday night in Seattle, Robertson gave up the 3-run homer to Julio Rodriguez, and his locker was right there when he walked into the clubhouse, and he was there, and he was waiting. It's professionalism. It's being accountable and being a good teammate, and pitchers have to do it more than anybody else.
Yep.
But personally, I want him back just because I like him.
Well, and the other thing too, I mean, not only are they good guys, but when you know that you've got that at the back end of the bullpen, from a team perspective, that's one less thing that you have to worry about. You know that element of the club is taken care of. So now let's address some other things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you think? Is there anything offensively that can be done with external help, or is it a matter of these guys that are on the roster just figuring it out and getting better?
Well, after listening to Chris Young talk about his extension and what needs to be done immediately here for 2025, I get the sense that they feel like a big step forward for the offense will be A, having Evan Carter healthy, B, having Josh Young healthy and available for the full season, and having a guy like Adolis Garcia get back to what he was the last couple of years. But there's absolutely no way that I would be surprised by the Rangers going out and acquiring another player or two to help the offense, because one of the things that's apparent in the game today, and certainly it played out this year from a pitching standpoint, when the Rangers had acquired all of these pitchers, and some of them we knew that they weren't going to be ready at the start of the season and weren't going to be available for a long time. You're like, man, we've got a lot of guys. You can never have enough pitching. And the same can be said for position players. So I think that you might see the Rangers go out and get a bat or two here in the off season and create some competition, which is obviously going to be a good thing. I don't think that they're just going to rest on their laurels and these are our guys and this is what we're going to go with. So don't be surprised to see them pick up some guys.
Yeah, I think you can look at center field, first base, really catcher this year. The deal with Evan Carter is he's still not going to be an everyday player against left-handers unless he magically figures that out in the offseason.
Sure.
And the problem with Leote is they don't form a platoon because they both can't hit left-handers. So you need a right-handed hitting outfielder at the least. I don't think they want to make Wyatt Langford a full-time center fielder.
No.
He hasn't been bad, but you can tell it's not. He's still a work in progress defensively, even in left field. So I think that they may just have to overhaul center. I mean, I don't know who's available or what have you, but I think that's a that's a position where they can upgrade. But they love Leote's defense, and then first base is another spot where we all love Nate Lowe, and but
he's got to have power.
13 homers isn't going to cut it at that position.
Nope.
So I don't know.
And that's true. And I think we all love Nate because of the kind of person that he is. But you're right. Those discussions have to be had. One other thing that I think maybe, and who knows if the Rangers are going to broach this topic with Corey Seager, but as Seager gets older, is it going to be beneficial for him and for the ball club for him to perhaps move over to first base? Seeing as how, Josh Smith's development this year and what we saw from him on the left side of the infield, certainly he's a guy that if he's the starting shortstop, you're good defensively. He took, strides this year offensively. Now, he's not going to be the power hitting guy that Corey Seager is, but maybe that's a discussion that needs to be had in terms of, how do we fill this out? How do we best use, the players that we have right now before we go out and get guys. But with Evan swinging from the left side against left-handed pitching, I think the hope was that this year that he was going to be an everyday guy who had the opportunity to figure that out. So now you're going to have him see a lot of left-handed pitching, I think, in spring training, so that the Rangers can decide whether or not he is an everyday guy or whether he is, the strong side of a platoon guy. I would think, given his age, that the Rangers want him to be an everyday player.
Sure.
But he's got to be healthy, and he's got to get as many swings as he can against lefties to find out.
Sure.
Yeah. And then I know we talked about Yates and Robertson, but on the pitching side, I think Evaldi's got to be the number one offseason target. You can look at Kumar Rocker and Jack Leiter and say, hey, great future, but they're going to have some speed bumps. You need a veteran guy, and I think Evaldi's just a natural fit.
And I would agree with that. And it's not just Nathan Evaldi and what he does every 5 days, but it's what he means to the ball club on a daily basis.
Yeah,
how much of an impact that he's had on not just the younger pitchers, but basically everybody else on the ball club. You talk about great teammates, and he's right at the top of the list. And he's a guy that you definitely want in the clubhouse for that clubhouse chemistry.
Yeah, no question. And I know like DeGrom, hopefully can make 25 starts. Let's be realistic here. He's coming off of Tommy John and hasn't thrown anywhere close to a normal load of innings since 2019. And
Kamara's never pitched a full pro season.
Yeah, even if Rocker's in the rotation, he's not going to throw 150 innings. So, it goes back to you can't have enough pitching. So,
never
get Evaldi, the guy who is going to make 25 starts for you.
You may need more than Evaldi. Maybe you need to hit on a couple of these Urinas and stuff like that you sign on a minor league deal that can be long guys. And I mean, look. You need 8 or 9 starting pitching between AAA and the major leagues, because throughout the season, even if everyone's 100% healthy coming in, there's going to be times that they're just going to look at Jacob deGrom and go, you're not starting the next game. We just need to set you down, and we've got to manage you. Same with Kumar. They're going to have to do that with him. Leiter, if he makes the rotation, at least he's thrown some innings. He's been playing pro ball and throwing the innings, but you've got those two guys coming back from Tommy John are just not going to be available to go 150 to 200 innings. They're just not.
Right, and it's not just the Rangers. When you take a look at every ball club, it's very rare to have a team like Seattle. They've only had 7 starters. That
happen.
That happens once every, 5 or 10 years throughout the big leagues, that a team only has 7 guys that have started for them all season long. And when you think about what the Rangers did this year, how many guys were there for every turn of the rotation? 1 guy, Andrew Heaney.
Right.
So when you're planning for the next season, okay, you might have 1 guy, you might have 2 guys if you're fortunate, that are there for 30 starts. The rest, you're going to have 5, 6, 7 other guys that you feel are dependable and guys that are going to be at some point in the season standouts to be able to fill out that 162. It's you can't just go, okay, well, these are our 5 guys because how many starters have the Rangers used this year? And that's typical of most ball clubs.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Now, the 2011 Rangers were like this season's Mariners, except I think it was even more or fewer starts. They had the 5 guys that went through the season without going on the injured list, which is unheard of, like you said.
That's unheard of.
But look what it did for him. So, but and then you forget about Tyler Malley, right? I mean,
Bradford,
he's $17 million next year. John Gray is $14 million. That's too much to be a reliever, probably. So I just don't see how they. I think there'll be some trades made this offseason on the pitching front. I don't know if with John going on the injured list every other week, it seems like. I just think it's going to be a wild offseason, honestly, when it comes to the pitching.
Yeah, and it could be, and that's one of the things you never know. What the offseason holds, but clearly the ball club has some assets. But you bring up another point, Jeff. I don't think the Rangers want to exceed the tax threshold in 2025. So how that money gets allocated is going to be important, because I think that they're probably going to want to stay under the threshold. Given the new rules in terms of I think a lot of people are still learning about how the draft works now. It's not just okay, you finish with the worst record in baseball, you get the first pick in the draft. It's not that way anymore. It's weighted. And this year, despite the fact that I think it's the A's and the White Sox and how bad their record is, they're not going to be a part of that lottery deal. They're not going to have an opportunity to get the number 1 pick in the draft. And so how much money you spend on a yearly basis has an impact on all of that stuff. And so there's so much more now that goes into making these decisions. But I think the Rangers are probably going to want to stay under that threshold for 25.
Well, man, they still have to figure out their TV deal. It's just MLB could do the games, though I don't think MLB is going to pay very well. So then, do the Rangers do it themselves? Can they do over-the-air games for part of their schedule? Definitely can't do the whole schedule. That's just too much inventory. It's just there are a lot of questions that need to be answered, and I don't know. This may be a situation where Ray Davis has to dig into his own pocket, and I don't know that that's his nature.
And a question that's way above my pay grade, that's for sure.
Yeah, probably one you don't want to answer as a club employee. So,
yeah.
So, what are you going to do after the season ends? What does Matt Hicks do in the offseason?
Well, number one, you rest a little bit. My wife and I are planning on staying in LA a few days after the season ends, since our son is living out there now. So we're going to spend a little time out there. The only thing that we have planned beyond that is a trip to Vegas with some neighbors, which we're going to do at the end of October. So a little rest and relaxation before you start, cramming information for 2025.
What do you like to play in Vegas, man?
Well, you know what? We actually don't go very often. We have neighbors, our next door neighbors. They don't go all that often either, but they go with more regularity than we do, certainly. And this past spring training, when I had a couple of days off in the middle of spring training, we went out to LA to see our son, but we also took some time to go to Vegas, and we just had a good time for like 2 days. And so we were like, well, we get the opportunity again. We're going to go out there, and it's not like we're big gamblers, because goodness knows we're not very good at it. I've actually had a little luck just playing a couple of slots on a few occasions. I tell the story about once a few years ago when we were in Cleveland, having a day game, flying into Cleveland, and at night I just wanted to go over and eat a little at the casino, and then I'll stop by the slots and see what happens. And I ended up walking away with like $800, and so yeah. So occasionally I get lucky in that regard, but we just want to spend some time with our neighbors, have a good time. We're going to see a couple of shows, and just rest and relax out there.
And as somebody that's like that, Vegas is fun. You can go do that, but guys, there's a reason those casinos have all those lights and are really pretty. It's because if you go in with a mindset, I'm just going to take this much money and have a little fun, it's a lot of fun because that's just a great town and a lot of fun stuff. But I always say that there's a reason those casinos are so pretty and lit up so well. It's because they win a lot.
Yeah, they don't lose.
they don't lose.
They don't have a losing day ever.
Yeah.
No, I love going to Vegas for a football weekend. Yeah. On Saturday you have college football, and then on Sunday, of course, you have the NFL. It's just a good. I mean, if you want to watch games, throw some money out on the games. It's just a great way to spend.
Yeah, you can bet $5 on a football game. It's awesome, and then they might give you a free malted beverage for that. And a lot of casinos.
Yeah, I don't know. Last I heard is they've really cut back on the free drinks, which is ridiculous.
I can tell you this: back when I worked in El Paso, and this is a long time ago, one of the things that Jim Paul and Karen Paul and their staff did was they treated their employees to a trip to Vegas at the end of the season. So when the minor league season ended, there was still some work to do. They hosted something called the minor league baseball workshop, whatever it was. It was something that we would work for 3 or 4 days, and then shortly after that, usually in early October, we would take a staff trip to Las Vegas, and we had to pay for the trip in advance. But then, like the first time I went on the trip, the Monday before we took the trip on Tuesday, there'd be an envelope sitting on my desk, and I'd open up the envelope, and it had $300 cash in it. And so while you had to commit like $200 to the trip in the middle of the summer, they ended up basically paying for the trip. And we would go out there, and we'd be there on like a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, could do whatever you wanted to do. It was a good time. And one of the things that I would do is I'd go by one of the sports books, and I'd be like, you know what? I'm going to put down a parlay here on college football and spend $10, because that's basically, all I had working in the minor leagues. And I can remember one time putting down $10 on a 4-game parlay against the spread. And I wasn't going to find out until after we left Vegas, right? We were there Tuesday through Thursday. So we get back to El Paso. I'm watching as much college football as I can to see if I'm getting my games right. And my first 3 games were correct. So I only had 1 game left to hit the parlay. And the $10 bet was going to pay off like $240, $250, which was big for me back then.
Sure.
The final game was USC against Cal. And I bet USC to cover 14 points. And I couldn't find, and this is a long time ago. This is back in the 90s. It's not like you could just pick up your phone and follow the game. I didn't know what the score was. And finally, I came across one of the networks that had some highlights. And they're like, you're not going to believe the ending to the USC Cal game. And I'm like, oh, good. This is great. And they showed the score, and USC was up 26-10. And I'm like, yes. And there was less than a minute to go, and USC was punting, and this Cal guy received the punt at the 10-yard line. And 50 seconds later, after one of the most incredible punt returns of all time, where everybody from USC had 2 chances to tackle this guy, they didn't. And this guy scores a touchdown with like 10 seconds to go, and the final score was 26-16. I almost destroyed my television set.
And that was the old one with the big tube in it, too. There wasn't the flat screens like today.
It was not a flat screen.
The best stories about Vegas are the losing stories. Because I think it was 2000 or 2001, I had bet some money on the Masters. Futures bet on the Masters. Chris DeMarco was 40-1. All right. And he was a pretty good little golfer at the time from Florida. And So he's winning the Masters deep into the last round, and he's winning until Tiger has that remarkable chip in on 16, where Tiger flew the green and then chipped it up, and it just rolled and rolled and rolled and rolled and rolled and stopped, and then went in, and he went crazy. Yeah. So that one shot cost me like $500. Yeah, because I was like, man, Chris DeMarco, and there's no second place. It's not like, oh, he finished second, you get half your money. It's win or nothing.
That's it.
Yeah. So I'm not a Tiger Woods fan because of that.
So then, Jeff, every time you see that replay, you get a little sick feeling in the pit.
I do. I'm like, son of a bitch.
He doesn't wear Nike products anymore. I mean, he's completely done with it. My
pocket starts to burn a little bit, and dang it. And you see the highlight every year. Yeah. Every year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, listen, Matt, we've taken up a lot of your time here, and I mean, it's great for you to pop on. It's fun every time I see Matt. We get down and start talking about our kids, and they're both in the same studying the same thing. Of course, your son's out now, and so he's out there trying to make it as an actor, and then my son's in his sophomore year now. So we're about to make our trips to Missouri to see some shows he's in and doing all of that. But I mean, it's just our friendship's come a long way since I first started covering it. I appreciate you so much. We really appreciate you stopping down and taking time with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Always enjoy talking to you guys. What show is your son in? First show here this fall? Do you know?
Yeah, my wife has it all written out, and he tells me about the different parts. He's actually going to audition for a musical, even though he's not doing the music part of it. He's just studying acting, but he said he's going to audition for everything, even if he's chorus or whatever, just to do it all. And so I forget what it is. It's he has 8 things going at the same time too. He does a lot of that. Where in college, Jeff, you'll have a lot of the actors will write their own plays, and they'll get other actors to do them, and so he's doing a lot of that too. So,
I get it.
Yep, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And it's fun to watch. I mean, if your kids are ever into any sort of theater, it is a lot of fun to watch, and you just appreciate so much what these actors do and how they can do that. So it's pretty impressive.
No question. They're always busy, and so it's good to hear that he's going to be busy this fall.
Well, guys, that's Matt Hicks. Matt, we thank you for stopping down. We're going to go down in the bus leagues right after this. Matt, thanks again, and we'll see you at the ball yard.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Down in the Bus Leagues is brought to you by the Frisco Rough Riders. Jeff, what's going on in Frisco?
Well, as we will be talking about here in just a second, the Rough Riders are still alive for at least one more game in the postseason. You can get your tickets at milb.com/Frisco. But other than that, you know what? The season is over. Can't thank them enough for their support for a second straight year. Scott Burchett and Chuck Greenberg always willing to help out me, which I greatly appreciate. I've known Chuck for a long time now, ever since he started floating around with Lion the Ball Club, and for them to be able to help out you and me, John, it's incredibly humbling time for them to see that we can help them and they can help us. Frisco will have several events that are not AA baseball related. They host a college tournament in February. Always a good time there. So for more information, go to milb.com/Frisco and keep checking back throughout the off season. They also host a caravan event every year, so be sure to check that out too.
All right, a big thanks to Matt Hicks for joining. It's always fun when he comes on with us. Now, guys, it's time to go down in the bus leagues, which there's only a couple things going on right now, including playoff baseball. It's the only playoff baseball in the entire Rangers organization. Big win last night. But first of all, let's get this out of the way. Single A, high A, and low A are both done. Neither one of them made the playoffs. So they are, I guess some of them go off to fall instruct. Some of them are just done for the season. Is that kind of where we are?
Yeah. I would imagine the instructs are going on right now in Arizona, and but they're depending on their workload. They may just be out there for some some individual light work. Some of them they are playing games. a few a week. And then there's the fall league, which will start up, and I'm sure there are some guys who will be pitching there. But I haven't seen those rosters yet.
When do those come out?
They should be coming out like any day. So but the Rangers will have definitely have, I think they had 8 last year who played for the team, the surprise team. And I would imagine that some guys,
is that what they were called?
The Saguaros, yeah. I would imagine some guys who dealt with injuries could pitch. I don't know this, but like Avery Weems, who's back pitching, he's a guy who could probably pitch in the fall league. Just some guys to who need some innings. Also, some guys who are kind of maybe some Rule 5 guys who the Rangers might be able to deal beforehand. There's a lot of tricks with the fall league, believe it or not.
Get in front of scouts, right? For any
exactly. Get these guys in front of scouts.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, anyway. Okay. So now let's go up to AA. What walk off last night? Abby Ortiz, who tied the game with the home run, and what was that? The 10th or the 9th? He tied it up.
Yeah, they're down to their last strike or their last out. It looked like the season was about to end, and he hit a home run and tied the game, sent it to extra innings, and
he hit the sacrifice fly, which was not deep as you would like.
Yeah. Frisco tied it in the 10th. Again with 2 outs with Alejandro Osuna, who was the minor league player of the year. We'll talk about that in a second. And then Ortiz, won it in the 11th. It's a sac fly. You're right. It was not a deep fly ball by any stretch of the imagination. And I don't know who the center fielder is, and I've never seen him play. So I'm not going to disparage him too much, but that might be the worst throw I've ever seen.
Yeah, he was way up the line.
It was just a terrible throw. It
wasn't adrenaline.
It wasn't that it was just up the line. It was like hopping. I don't even think it made it to the pitcher's mound. It seemed like he didn't put himself in a good position to throw. But whatever happened, and it was good news for Frisco.
Yep, who is now they live to fight another day.
Yeah, they've got to win tonight, Friday night. They've got to win tonight, and if they win, then the championship series will begin at Frisco on Sunday.
Do we know who's on the bump?
I have not seen that. No.
Okay. We'll check that out later. Try to get that. We'll tweet it out later. I'll find out who's on there. I know they've set that up. So now let's go to AAA, where they're finishing their season too, right? Their season's ending.
Yes, they're in their final week. Dogs are barking.
Yep.
But they're in
by
their
the way,
final week.
We talked about it earlier. Jeff's not here.
Yeah, they're in their final week of the season, and it's not going to be as good a year as I think they were anticipating there in Round Rock, because it was a pretty talented team, at least to start the year.
Right.
But there's still guys, and I don't know how many times I have to talk about Blaine Krim.
Kidding.
He was selected as the Round Rock Player of the Year by Round Rock, and he has a 20 homer season for the 4th straight year. He's into the 80s in RBIs. His OPS is over 800. It's where he always is, and there's got to be some hits in the major leagues for this guy. It's got to translate. He has the most hits in the Pacific Coast League the last 2 years, basically because he's played full time there the last 2 years. He needs to be in the major leagues, and it may not happen with the Rangers. I think it's time to face that reality. It may have to be with another club, but he should get a shot. Now, it's not to say he won't get one here in the last week. The rosters are flexible, and that's a possibility, but it just doesn't. It seems like it would have happened by now. There's no reason.
I think so too. I don't understand it, but I get it. A lot of people that we talked about earlier are low on Foscue, but Foscue's not playing. It's hard to just come up and do that. We addressed that earlier, but I'd love to have seen Blaine get up here and take a couple of cuts in the big leagues. You've got Corey, who you could put on the 60-day just to do it, and because you'll bring him back off here anyway, just to let the guy get some at bats. And you'd have to option somebody, obviously, but you got guys that have options. It could be optioned down to play a couple games in AAA. But it certainly seems like if it hadn't happened by now, it's probably not going to.
Right. And so we'll see what happens in the offseason. I think he can be a free agent. I think he's a minor league free agent. So
what about the awards?
Yeah, so the awards, the Rangers named their awards. Annual minor league awards, Alejandro Osuna was the player of the year, the MVP. Pitcher of the year was Alejandro Osuna. The reliever was Brian Magdaleno. Defender was our buddy Cody Freeman. And then the Texas Spirit Award went to Jax Biggers. I was, you could call the first couple an upset. Really, I mean, Osuna did have a really good year at
Rosario was the pitcher, though. You said Osuna.
Oh yeah, Rosario the pitcher. Osuna was the pick over Sebastian Walcott, who take away his April and his year is fantastic. It's fantastic anyway, considering he's 18. Right. And then Blaine Krim had a really good year also. So, but Osuna is just kind of an all around guy. He hits for power. He can run the bases well. So I mean, he's not undeserving at all. He's a good defensive player.
Sure.
Just not necessarily a top tier prospect though. And then Rosario was the choice over Teodo. Teodo obviously had a fantastic year, was the star of the Futures game, really. Yeah. But Rosario, my interpretation of what was that this award went to player development. He did not do very well in college. They overhauled him. He might be the example of what they want to do for their young pitchers, of getting them to focus on their strengths and dominate their strengths. And I mean, he struck out like 120 and walked 13. I mean, it's pretty staggering, that number. And he's definitely deserving of it. Teodo, obviously,
is deserving also.
He's probably going to be on the 40-man roster here in November. And then Magdaleno, he gave up some runs last night. It's the first time he'd been scored upon in 17 games.
Yeah.
Just over 3 levels, left-hander. So, and then Cody Freeman can play anywhere, including catcher, and he had a really good offensive year. He had a home run last night. He got Frisco its first run. And then Biggers is a guy who's, kind of in the mold of your buddy Ryan Doro, who's been around in the system for a while, comes to the ballpark to play every day, plays a lot of different positions, does it well, and just has some roadblocks in front of him. But he's kind of the example of what the Rangers want their players to be like. So all well deserved, and congrats to them. They're going to be recognized before the game Saturday, before Scherzer starts, and then they will be recognized at the winter banquet. So some good things ahead for them.
Well, let's go over real quick the calendar of the offseason. So it's getting ready to start. I mean, season's going to end. Even if Frisco makes it to the finals, that's going to be over with early next week or midweek or whatever. Would they play best of 5 there, or are they going to play
just best of 3?
Best of 3. So that'll be over with. So everything's going to end by next Friday. All minor league baseball is over with, no matter what Frisco does. Let's go with our calendar. So we've got fall instructs. We know some of the babies, the kids, are going to be at fall. They're there now. Then you got the fall league. Are they going to do anything this year? They've done it a couple times. They didn't do it last year, where they go around and play some of the colleges or anything like that.
I don't know. I haven't asked about that because the end of instructs usually coincides with fall ball for colleges, and they did kind of a barnstorming deal the last couple, not last year, but the 2 years prior. And I don't know if they're going to do that this year. There's kind of a debate on how much do you play them after they've already played a year. Is it worth it? So I don't know that they'll do that this year or not. I usually hear from my TCU people if it's on the schedule or not. Right. So, just once all that's over with, and once the fall league's over with, again, that's only 8 of however many 165 active players. They go into their offseason mode, and some of them become free agents. Some of them are going to get released. I mean, that's just the nature of it. And then in January, the Rangers will have their international class, which depending on if Sasaki is posted, will hinge on him. And then then they'll show up to spring training. Some of them will come early, be available for early substitutes in Cactus League games, and then their camp always starts like the first week of March.
Yeah. Well, guys, listen, we're gonna keep this thing going all during the offseason like we always have. Jeff, of course, so DLLS has the daily show going. In fact, we've talked about this. We're going to get all the DLLS Rangers crew on here sometime in the next few weeks just to recap the season, kind of talk about what's coming up, winter meetings, do all of that. I think that'd be a fun thing, and get that going on. Again, we appreciate all of y'all. Anything else before we get out of here?
No, just one more week to go on the big league side, and then it's going to be a busy off season. Lots to do.
Yep, that's it. Well, guys, as we always say, thanks for being here for this one. Thanks to Matt Hicks for joining us. For Jeff Wilson, I'm John Moore, and until we see you next time, see you at the yard.